Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. I hope you're well. So, they just got done with the proceedings at the Old Bailey, so of course, I gotta come on and give you a summary of what happened. I hope you're all okay. So, I'm just gonna get straight into it, right? So, of course, I was covering this live on Twitter as well. If you're not following, make sure you do at RichardMedhurst, RICHI Medhurst, and I cover the hearing every day. So today was day 7 of this sham trial, this kangaroo court. And, you know, technical difficulties aside, as usual, right? There isn't a day that goes by without that. But they brought in the first witness to testify, the first expert witness. He's a journalist who used to work for the Sunday Times, LA Times. He worked at Der Spiegel as well, which is a German newspaper that also helped publish a lot of the WikiLeaks documents and cables, right? So if you recall, WikiLeaks worked in tandem with several major publications to release these cables and expose the war crimes, including The Guardian, including Le Monde in France, and Der Spiegel was one of them. And so Goetz, he was working with Assange on the Afghan war diary, and he was the first expert witness today at the Old Bailey. And so, you know, this guy's a longtime journalist and has tons of experience and worked directly with Assange, and he told the court that Julian Assange in no way endangered people's lives, right? Because this is a cornerstone of what the prosecution is alleging. They're saying that Julian Assange put sources' lives at risk. He recklessly published documents. He refused to redact names of informants, and that's what they're alleging the indictment is about, because, you know, they don't want to come out and say that they're prosecuting Assange for exposing their war crimes, which is what it's really about, and going against the national security state. So they have to frame it as, oh, we're the victims, right? Americans are always victims, never the aggressors, even though the fucking war crimes, you know, 15,000 deaths alone just in Iraq, the torture programs, the drone strikes. No. It's these non-existent victims, which they can't provide one single example of, right? They're victims, even though they can't provide any shred of evidence that they're victims. And of course, the entire subject matter here is not the people that were tortured, the people who were kidnapped, the people that were drone striked, the people who were locked up in jail, the people who were killed and assassinated. No, it's the non-existent American victims. Unfucking believable. So anyway, we go into John Goetz's testimony, right? And he also made it clear that not only was Julian Assange very tactical in what WikiLeaks published, but they also tried to warn and tell the White House what was going on multiple occasions, and they even redacted a lot of documents just for the sake of keeping people's identity safe, of making sure that no one had their identity or their lives risked needlessly. And so he said that 15,000 documents, up to 15,000 documents, were not published just in this endeavor alone, just for the sake of making sure that sources and informants and people that were mentioned in these cables were not exposed. So this completely blows this narrative out of the water that's coming out of the prosecution, right? Moreover, a really important point here that Goetz underscored is that thanks to the publications from WikiLeaks, they were actually able to identify the kidnappers that participated in the rendition and torture of a German citizen. So, as you can see here, in 2003, okay, they kidnapped a German citizen called Khaled El-Masri, right? So you can read here what they did to him, and I mean it's sickening. And there's also on the ACLU website an entire case about this, which went all the way to the European Court of Human Rights. So essentially, the Macedonian police they kidnapped this guy, they arrested him in 2003, and then gave him over to the CIA. Okay? This is in December 2003. And this guy's completely innocent. He's not done nothing, okay? Completely innocent. And the CIA jailed him and tortured him. And it's absolutely sickening. And it's only thanks to WikiLeaks, to the cables that they published, that they were actually able to get this guy any semblance of justice, right? Because this helped him actually win his case at the European Court of Human Rights for what it's worth. I don't think it actually makes up for what they did to him, but for what it's worth, it did actually help bring this to light. Now, the thing is that Goetz said, because of these revelations, the German government, they were able to issue arrest warrants for 13 of these CIA agents. Now, he says also that at the same time, behind the scenes, you could see that the U.S. was pressuring Germany enormously and saying that, if they actually went ahead with this, that there will be consequences. And of course, they threatened them because there's no such thing as United States allies. You're a subordinate to the United States. There's no such thing as being an ally. You're just a tool. And, what ended up happening is that these warrants, they weren't even issued in the correct jurisdiction. So essentially, nothing came of them, and it was never intended to. So that's one thing. But regarding Khaled El-Masri, this was actually a really huge point of contention today in the court, and I'll get to that in a second again. But afterwards, you had the prosecution rise. So James Lewis, QC, it was his turn to examine Goetz, and they had a little exchange about the timeline of events. So what happened here is that Lewis was trying to assert that Julian Assange recklessly published documents and released the password and of the encrypted files. And of course, this is nonsense because, he used a statement that was issued by The Guardian and Le Monde, and it was a joint statement issued in 2011 where they criticized WikiLeaks for reckless publication of unredacted documents, which is completely ironic because their journalist, David Ley, is the one who actually let the password out. So the whole statement is bogus, and Goetz pointed this out. He said, well, when they co-signed this joint statement in 2011, not all the facts were out. And, this is once again just a smear job. That's what it is. It was just an attempt to shift the blame. And we have so many examples of Julian Assange, so many examples of WikiLeaks working to make sure that people's identities were not exposed, withholding documents. So, they're really grasping at straws in the prosecution to go after Assange. And I want to point something out to you. Notice how the prosecution, Lewis, is referring to a joint statement from the media as proof, quote unquote, that, you see, Julian Assange, he's so reckless. But yesterday, on the other hand, he said that, how do you know the Obama administration chose not to prosecute Julian Assange? Are you basing that off of media reports? And he was using that to try and discredit the expert witnesses, saying that, it's just conjecture and they're just basing this off of what they heard in the media. Well, why are you doing that here? You're also basing this conclusion that Julian Assange let the password out and published unredacted documents recklessly based on a joint statement in the media. So, it's such a blatant double standard. When it suits the prosecution, they want to use references from the media to build their case while also excluding any sort of reference from the media, even when it's official goddamn statements from people working in the DOJ at the time under Obama saying we couldn't prosecute Assange. We didn't want to prosecute Assange. There was no legal basis to prosecute Assange. It's unbelievable, this double standard. It really is. I can't believe no one brought that up in the court. Anyway, Goetz, once again, he told Lewis, listen, I worked with Assange. Julian Assange did everything he could to redact these documents and to make sure that people's identities were kept safe. That's what happened. So after this exchange with about the timeline of events, it was quite funny because I don't think Lewis has abandoned a questioning so quickly up until now. He didn't even spend half an hour with Goetz. Usually he spent hours. Yesterday he's been and the day before that, he spent 4 hours total with Eric Lewis. But in this case, I think he gave up pretty quickly because he knew that it's not really going to get anywhere with Goetz, who was there when this happened and participated in the publication. But okay. So This is a joint statement, by the way, from The Guardian, where they criticize WikiLeaks. But simultaneously, I mean, WikiLeaks themselves spoke to this issue, and you know, it's really absurd that they were included in this as a courtesy, as an attempt to try and widen the reach of these documents so that more people will be informed, and then they just turncoat against Assange. So, you know, this was a statement from WikiLeaks saying that it's The Guardian who, you know, negligently disclosed these passwords, and I think that's pretty obvious. Nonetheless, moving on. So we had this point of contention with Khaled El-Masri, which I told you about earlier. So that's him. The defense, they tried to read a statement from him to the court so that it may be entered into the record, and the prosecution objected, and they had like 2 hours of back and forth. Well, if you include the lunch break as well, it's a bit longer, but the prosecution refused to enter this into the record. And so their point was that they essentially just didn't want it in the record that, yeah, the United States tortured an innocent man. Well, tortured, or, you know, innocent or not, it's still illegal. But moreover, to add insult to injury, he had absolutely nothing to do with whatever they were alleging him to be part of Al-Qaeda or something. No, it was completely innocent. So they refused to accept this, of course. And I find this so ridiculous and hypocritical because the prosecution are trying to establish, remember, the entire case is that, oh, look, Julian Assange published these classified documents and he recklessly endangered the lives of informants, even though they can't provide a single example. And at the same time, they refuse to admit that they themselves, the United States, killed and tortured people. And it's from Julian Assange, it's from WikiLeaks that we know this. I mean, the fucking hypocrisy here is unreal. Like, we have to take their alleged victimhood seriously, which is non-existent, but they refuse to even acknowledge the legitimate, factual victims that they killed and tortured and maimed and put under extreme suffering for decades. It's unbelievable. So they refuse to let the defense read this. And you can see the full witness statement from Goetz, the journalist from Der Spiegel, and he said here that the importance of the exposure of state criminality of the kind that occurred in Mr. El-Masri's case cannot be overstated. Amongst other effects of its publications, a number of cables published by WikiLeaks threw light on the pressures and bullying techniques brought by the US in more than one country to prevent the prosecution of CIA agents involved in the El-Masri case. These detailed revelations threw light on otherwise inexplicable actions by the countries involved, together with other information regarding the Afghan-Iraq wars and Guantanamo Bay, and in relation to other renditions and rendition flights. The full picture could finally be seen and understood. So, no way to downplay the importance of this, especially in just one case alone, never mind a slew of war crimes, right? So afterwards, when the lunch break was over and the court resumed, we had Daniel Ellsberg, right? So Daniel Ellsberg, very, very famous. This is, I mean, essentially a star expert witness in this hearing at this point. You know, he himself leaked a bunch of classified documents that were actually way more sensitive than what WikiLeaks published. And this is back in 1971, right? The Pentagon Papers. So he leaked this study that was put together by Defense Secretary McNamara about the Vietnam War, and it exposed the rules of engagement and the thought process of the U.S. inside of Vietnam and their illegal secret bombing campaigns in Cambodia and Laos. And I mean, what he did almost cost him his freedom as well. They tried to prosecute him as well under the Espionage Act, the very same one that they threw at Chelsea Manning, the very same one they're throwing at Julian Assange right now. So he's been in their shoes, right? And he was also looking down the barrel, I think, of 110 or 115 years in prison. Thankfully for him, luckily, his ordeal only lasted 4 months. I think they tried to charge him in January and then they abandoned it in May of 1973. So nonetheless, he spent decades being vilified because of this. And he knows firsthand how cruel the justice system is. And so he spoke to that and the risks that Julian would face. But before we get to that, he underscored the importance of what WikiLeaks did, okay? Because he knows himself, having leaked the Pentagon Papers to the public, that the people have a right to know, and you can't trust the government to tell the truth. So he said that he says Assange, WikiLeaks, Chelsea Manning is being very similar to himself, and he identifies a lot with what they did because, you know, he recognizes this determination to inform the public and expose wrongdoing by the government. Okay, so he identifies a lot with them and feels very similar. And it's insane how the prosecution then tried to establish a difference between the two. But you know, going back to this point that WikiLeaks have been reckless with their publications, which is what they tried to prove in the morning again with Goetz. Ellsberg just straight up told them that no, this is not true. He's seen what they did, and he recognizes in Julian Assange's work that Julian Assange has been very tactful, very technical, very delicate, and he knows for a fact that they withheld documents. They didn't just recklessly publish anything that was given to them. Okay, so that's one thing, right? And this is a very important point. Ellsberg said that much like with the Vietnam War, he saw the same thing with the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, that these were just stalemates in essence. You know, Afghanistan is now the longest war in U.S. history, would beat Vietnam's record. And he sees extreme similarities between the two. Not just that, but all of the lying on the part of several administrations about WMDs, about links to Al-Qaeda, about this war on terror. You know, all of this wrongdoing by the government, the need to expose the corruption, the torture, the killing is essential. So that's the point he was trying to make. That's the point he was trying to make. And, you know, he then went on to talk about the Collateral Murder video. So you guys remember that video? This is really when WikiLeaks overnight became a household name. So this was in Baghdad in 2007. And you could see from an Apache helicopter how they were killing civilians, and then they killed children, and then they killed the people trying to rescue them. And then among those were journalists as well from Reuters, photographers. So I'm sure you remember this video, right? It's 20 minutes long, but I mean, if you haven't seen that video before, I'm sure most of you have, but if you have not, I implore you to do so, because Julian Assange is facing 175 years just so you could see this fucking video. So make sure you go and watch it, amongst other things, of course. And, you know, Chelsea Manning was tortured so you could see this video. Go and watch it and you'll understand why they're going after them. I mean, this video alone is so fucking disgusting. Like, it's gut-wrenching. It makes you want to puke. You know, they're just laughing and joking while they're shooting and killing people from a helicopter. Killing kids. I mean, they literally say almost word for word in the video, oh, it's their fault. They shouldn't have brought their kids to a battle. What the fuck are you doing in Iraq, asshole? It's not what the kids are doing in Iraq. What are you doing in Iraq? Like, the logic is unreal. And they just fucking kill them. They just shoot at them from a helicopter. So Daniel Ellsberg, he was pointing out the importance of this video and how this was a necessity for the public to see. And he was most shocked by the fact that this didn't violate the rules of engagement according to the US government. And the public was just sort of acquiescent to it, right? Because no one could do anything. The US just doubled down and said, yeah, well, it is what it is. And this abides by the rules of engagement and no one's going to be punished. And that's it. Unbelievable. It's unreal. And you know, just one last point before I continue with Collateral Murder, because I think this is really crucial to understand. Ellsberg, he raised the issue of classified documents and how these things are classified. He said that another thing that shocked him is the normalization, the desensitization to war crimes, because what Chelsea Manning gave to WikiLeaks, anyone could access. You had hundreds of thousands of people who get access to stuff on servers. right? These are just basic field reports at this point. What he released about the Vietnam War, that was top secret. Okay? But now we're in the 21st century and you have war crimes and torture. It's not even classified as top secret. It's like a low-level field report, like the stuff that he himself used to write in Vietnam. And so his point was that this indicates a clear desensitization to war crimes. It's become normal. It's like they don't even bother to try and hide it. Why even classify it as top secret? Who gives a shit? Yeah, he's right. He's correct. I mean, just because you classify top secret doesn't make it okay, but the point is well taken that the US are so shameless. It's become so normal for them to get away with murder and torture and rendition that they can just do whatever they like. They don't even bother classifying it anymore. They just don't give a shit. So one interesting point going back to Collateral Murder was that he said the only thing that bothered him about the video, besides the war crimes, obviously, is that the title included the word collateral. And to him, I mean, you know, the word collateral implies something accidental, and there was nothing accidental about this video. It's true. Yeah? They're very, very clear in their intent, murdering civilians and laughing and joking about it. There's nothing accidental about it. But he went on to say also that when he was on trial for the Pentagon Papers and he was being charged under the Espionage Act, he was in court and he wanted to explain his motive, right? He wanted to explain why he released those papers, because it was in the public interest, etc. And he was denied. He was denied the opportunity in court to do that back in 73. And so at the time he complained about it and they told him, you know, he said that this has never happened before. And they told him, yeah, well, it is now. And you know, ever since Ellsberg was charged with the Espionage Act, everybody who's been charged since is not allowed to provide motive. So his point was that if Julian Assange is extradited to the US, he will also be denied the opportunity to explain why he leaked these, or rather published them, right? Chelsea Manning leaked them, but Julian Assange will not be given the opportunity in a US court to say that this was in the interest of the public, that this was necessary to expose war crimes, etc. He will be denied a fair trial. And I quote this to you, right? This is what Daniel Ellsberg said today. Julian Assange could not remotely get a fair trial in the United States. So I don't know how much clearer we can make it. There you go. So afterwards, the prosecution, referring to the Collateral Murder video, they said, you know, Lewis told them that, well, hold on, we're not prosecuting Assange for that, right? As they've said before, oh no, we're not prosecuting Julian Assange for exposing war crimes. And Ellsberg pointed out very tactfully, it was extremely solid witness, huh? Really. On par with Trevor Tim. He pointed out, listen, it doesn't say that explicitly, but implicitly when you're including the release of Iraq War rules of engagement and the files pertaining to that, you're de facto linking that to the Collateral Murder video. That's what it's all about. He's right, of course. And then once again, we hear the same nonsense. Oh, Julian Assange is only being prosecuted for allegedly endangering lives and putting sources in danger. And Ellsberg once again shuts him down. He said it's misleading. It's beyond misleading. It's a goddamn lie. They're prosecuting him for possession of documents, for attempting to solicit documents. Again, this is a daily occurrence and nothing wrong with that. All journalists do this. And also publishing. So these are common journalistic activities. These are all under the umbrella, not just of journalistic practices and journalistic freedoms, but just basic freedom of speech, the First Amendment. And that's what they're criminalizing here. And that's why this entire case is so significant and has far-reaching implications and really grave ramifications for everyone, not just journalists. Which makes it all the more egregious when you hear nothing about this in the fucking media, nothing about this from independent media and independent journalists, and they're just sitting on their asses talking about, you know, Bernie Sanders' asshole or something. I mean, this is ridiculous. What are you doing? How can you not be outraged about this? How can you not be concerned about this? And the extraterritorialization of it, it's not just in the fucking US. It's not even in the US. This is happening in a UK court to an Australian. We're all fucked. Do you not understand what's happening here? So this was hilarious. You know, the prosecution, they then try to tell Ellsberg himself that he was more careful than Julian Assange. They're trying to tell him, like, no, Julian Assange was reckless in his publications. You, Mr. Ellsberg, you were much more tactful and calculating what you could publish and what you could not. And this is further underscored by the fact that you did not give all of your documents to the media. There are 4 volumes that you gave to Congress. And Ellsberg's like, no, that's not true. Because number one, Julian Assange also very careful with what he did. He redacted names. He made sure not to publish a slew of documents that would endanger people. And we also know for a fact that no one was endangered as a result of WikiLeaks. Moreover, he explained that the reason he gave some of those volumes to Congress as opposed to the media was just for the sake of not railroading any diplomatic endeavors, any negotiations, any peace talks that were taking place. Okay, he said that he wanted to stand in the way of the Vietnam War, not Vietnam peace negotiations and diplomacy. And he didn't want to give the US government an excuse to use his releases as a reason to block any kind of peace, path towards peace. As we see all the time by the national security state. I mean, just look at back in June and July and August, these Russia bounty nonsense and Iran gate, just accusing the Russians and Iranians of allegedly putting out bounties on US soldiers, completely baseless bullshit, all for the sake of continuing the fucking war. And they used it. And the House Democrats and the entire US Congress used this as an excuse to keep the Afghanistan war going. So they will use any goddamn thing they can to bomb other countries, to occupy them for decades. We see this over and over. Julian Assange himself said every single war in the last 50 years has been started by lies. Oh, that's an understatement. Understatement. So Ellsberg explained that very eloquently, that it got nothing to do with tactful or rather endangering people's lives in that regard. It was just a question of not railroading peace negotiations. That's it. And the prosecution then asked Ellsberg, well, have you ever endangered people's lives with the Pentagon Papers? To which Ellsberg replies, yes. And that there was one name he did not redact of a CIA informant, Émile Lucien, right? So he says that at the time, this guy was already a known informant regardless, but nonetheless, he didn't want to redact the name because his point was that he should leave whatever he releases unaltered so that people have the full view of what's going on and can see that no good came of any of this. All of this killing achieved nothing, right? So that's why he wanted to leave everything unaltered. And Ellsberg just flat out disagreed with this portrayal that the prosecution is trying to put forward that, you were very responsible, Mr. Ellsberg, but WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, he's just reckless. And WikiLeaks and the Pentagon Papers, these two things are just not alike. And Ellsberg flat out rejected this. And again, they're telling this to his face. Like he was there, he did this, and they're just trying to convince him. It's insane. And Ellsberg told him, listen, not only do I disagree with this assertion, with this assertion rather, that WikiLeaks and the Pentagon Papers are different, but you just don't understand the motives, because much like Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, Julian Assange, what Ellsberg wanted to accomplish, his motives, were for the sake of informing the public, right? For exposing wrongdoing by the government. And he said that he fully supports them. We know this from before already, that he fully supports them and stands in solidarity with them. And he once again said that, listen, Julian, WikiLeaks, they took extreme precautions. And, there's even, when the password came out, there's even a video of Julian Assange trying to call up Hillary Clinton. This is, let me show it to you, man, because, here, take a look.
Beginning of the film, you'll see there's this extraordinary phone call that Julian makes where he's calling, he's trying to reach Hillary Clinton to speak to the State Department and warn them that a password was being circulated and that files were circulating on the internet. And so you have this just sort of incredible behind the scenes encounter.
Are you recording?
Yep.
Oh, hello. Can I please speak to Hillary Clinton? I'm calling from the office of Julian Assange. It's very important. Yep, so Julian Assange is the founder of WikiLeaks. Okay, and all of the US Department of State cables, we have intelligence that they are about to be put on the web, unredacted, not by us. And I would like to speak to her about this.
Sarah, she might be busy in some meetings. Find out who is her second in command.
Yes? You need to call me back. This is an emergency. You're the emergency line and it will take a while. Okay. Would you want to do that right now and I'll wait? He would like to speak to her about that, yes. Okay, well, let me start by giving you my phone number. 1 moment, please. More details other than the entire unredacted cable set is about to go on the internet. I mean, literally, it's about to happen. I don't understand why you are not seeing the urgency in this.
Just put him on. Who is he?
Okay.
Who is he? Hello? G'day, Chad. This is Julian Assange. To try and to make it clear, we don't have a problem, you have a problem. And we are trying to help you solve your problem because we are indirectly connected to your problem. I would like to speak to the most senior person available who can execute an action quickly to send someone to location here in Norfolk. Okay. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
I mean, if that wasn't clear enough, they just don't care. It's like, can we call you back? Dude, they're not delivering an Amazon package here. National security? Oh, that doesn't matter, apparently. Endangering lives? Yeah. Turns out when they tried to warn them, this is just one instance, right, of clear precaution being enacted by WikiLeaks. They didn't care. And Daniel Ellsberg, when he was testifying to the Old Bailey earlier today, he went on to say, listen, he believes that they let this happen on purpose. He believes the US, they wanted Julian Assange to release documents unredacted, or at least be able to blame him in some way and find a way to blame him on them. Because you can see here, he was trying to warn them and they just wouldn't take it. They wouldn't even take the call. And he says that they did this on purpose so they would have ammunition to use against Assange afterwards. And you can't win with these people. That's the point here. You can't win with them. You know, you can't win with them. So the last question that they asked Ellsberg before they let him go was, So once again, just one last very important point. Ellsberg, he pointed out the hypocrisy here, which I underscored just before, that, you know, when he published the Pentagon Papers, he was vilified. He was the villain. And he said that he included one CIA informant's name, right, Émile Lucien, but that there were hundreds of people mentioned in these Pentagon Papers. And he was vilified. And he had to watch out for the national security state and the FBI and the whole government going after him. And he was considered a traitor for decades. And then all of a sudden, when WikiLeaks comes along, now he's a patriot. And just like you're seeing in the fucking courtroom, in that moment, he's saying this to them. They're trying to paint me now as a responsible leaker or publisher, and that I did it correctly. Yet at the time, they were trying to put me in jail for 110 fucking years. But now they're using me against Julian Assange as some kind of token, right? So he's patriotic. Pentagon Papers are patriotic, but WikiLeaks is evil. You know, you can't win with them. You just can't win. So he underscored this hypocrisy. That was a very eloquently put rebuttal to all this nonsense from the prosecution and the mainstream media and the US government, all of it. And so one last question from the defense before his testimony was finished and concluded. They asked him, once again, do you agree with the federal prosecutor himself, AOC Kronberg, who's helped file the indictment against Julian Assange, that no one was killed as a result of WikiLeaks, no one was harmed? And do you also agree with this because it came out of Chelsea Manning's trial? They also had the same conclusion, right? You can see here, published in The Guardian, Brigadier General Robert Carr, a senior counterintelligence officer who headed the Information Review Task Force that investigated the impact of WikiLeaks disclosures on behalf of the Defense Department, told a court at Fort Meade, Maryland, that they had uncovered no specific examples of anyone who had lost his or her life in reprisals that followed the publication of the disclosures on the internet. Quote, I don't have a specific example, unquote. So we know this not just from Kronberg's statement, but also from the DOD themselves. They had a whole task force set up for this and couldn't find a single example. And so the defense asked Ellsberg one last time, do you agree with their conclusions? The government themselves saying that no one was harmed as a result of WikiLeaks? And Daniel Ellsberg said, yes, it's correct. No one was harmed. No one was killed. Nothing. Not a shred of evidence. That was it. He finished his testimony. He was on via a video link, but you could just hear him, and then that was it. The court adjourned until tomorrow morning. So, two expert witnesses today, John Goetz, Der Spiegel, and Daniel Ellsberg, New York Times and Pentagon Papers. And I think really, without a doubt, Daniel Ellsberg is the most significant witness thus far. But regardless, every single one of them is in agreement about what's happening, is that this trial is unjust, is unprecedented also in some ways. And what they're doing to Julian Assange is completely illegal and unfair, and it's going to criminalize journalism. It's an affront on freedom of speech as a whole, not just for journalists, everyone. Remember, there's no distinction. People think that journalists need some special protection. No, they don't. The First Amendment applies to everyone. You don't need to be a journalist or not a journalist. There's no distinction. There's just not. And once again, all of the other infractions against UK law, EU law, US law, international law, just all of it. And once again, they've led us down this path where now we're focusing on Julian Assange. We're focusing on the journalist instead of the fucking crime. We're focusing on the messenger instead of the message. The fucking war crimes, man. The torture, the drone strikes. What the fuck is going on here? Why isn't that being addressed? This double standard is unreal. I cannot get over this shit. I really can't get over this. How the United States is trying to pretend that they are victims, that these WikiLeaks publications somehow caused injury or harm to Americans. And they can't provide a single fucking example. Not one. The government themselves, the DOD themselves said this whole task force that they set up couldn't find a single example of anyone being harmed by WikiLeaks and what Chelsea Manning leaked to Julian Assange. Nothing, not one example. So they want to paint themselves as victims, even though they have no proof of being victims, while ignoring all of the thousands, the tens of thousands of victims in the fucking leaks. The people in Iraq, in Afghanistan, the people kidnapped and snatched in the middle of fucking Europe and then taken to CIA black sites, the mass surveillance, all of it. This is unbelievable. They're just shooting the messenger and then ignoring the message and letting these motherfuckers get away with war crimes in broad daylight, and no one is even reporting it. Not even independent media doing their fucking jobs, man. It's pathetic. Unacceptable shit. And the double standard in every regard, the illegality in every regard. It's really disgusting. Complete violation of any semblance of justice that you could fathom. So I just wanted to bring you up to date on that, okay? That was day 7 of this sham trial, this sham extradition hearing. And we'll be back tomorrow. There you go. So if you have any so with that said, make sure you follow on Twitter if you're not. Once again, I'm live tweeting about this as it's happening every day to give you live coverage, because this kangaroo court is not just in clear violation of any semblance of justice, but also hidden from the public on purpose so that no one can see what's going on, right? It's not just media who are not doing their job. It's also they're making sure media can do their job, even if they wanted to. And, you know, there are very few and far in between. But the fact that, you know, they locked out all the NGOs and human rights organizations and members of the European Parliament and anyone from observing what's going on in this pony show is indicative of how they're trying to sweep this under the rug. So if you want any kind of live updates, make sure you follow on Twitter, and I'll live tweet while it's happening. And with that said, if I may ask you to please support independent media, it's really appreciated if you could donate whatever, or also subscribe monthly on Patreon and Rockfin. It'd be greatly appreciated. So, you know, we're going to keep any semblance of indie media. We definitely need your support. That's all I'm going to say. And if you have questions, I will take your questions now. So shoot. Go ahead and shoot. I'll try to answer them as best as I can. You know, I was actually thinking, yesterday that, hold on just a second. Yeah, so there we go. Patreon.com/Papi Chuloman. Make sure you subscribe for as little or as much as you want. Everything is free again, but you know, supporting independent media is crucial. So we need your help. And like I was saying, I was just thinking yesterday that by the end of this extradition hearing, like the few of us who are covering this trial, we're going to be lawyers. But I mean, Jesus Christ, like just the mental gymnastics that they're going through. It's actually kind of interesting because you don't really need to have such a deep understanding of the law to know how absurd this thing is. As I've said many times before, any judge, any reasonable judge who's really honestly being fair would have thrown this out immediately. I mean, this is violating the most basic principles of a trial. The fact they gathered evidence on Assange by spying on him is enough reason to throw it out. Never mind the fact that there's no legal basis to prosecute him. Once again, please, for God's sake, read the letter, the open letter to the UK government from lawyers for Assange. They beautifully outlined every single violation of UK, US, EU, international law. It's so eloquently put. And I did a video about it too to summarize it. And it's so flagrant what they're doing. It really is. So nonetheless, I do think we should all have raised the bar by the time this extradition hearing is over. But, you know, more importantly, I hope that Assange is freed, because I don't think that this judge has any intention of actually being impartial. I think she's playing into their hands, if you want to put it mildly. I think she's flat out a tool of Uncle Sam, if we're being realistic. Any judge would have thrown this out the first minute. I mean, you got to keep in mind she's keeping Assange jailed until last week on an outdated indictment. Can you show me anybody who's in jail on an outdated indictment and then gets rearrested the day of the trial on the new one, and they can't even give him ample time to read the warrant? What the fuck is going on here, man? Like, it's absurd. So we got a few donations. I just wanted to read to you guys. Glory, I feel you. I feel you. They're really playing with this. Hold on. For some reason, I can't pull this up. I don't know why it's not showing. Give me a second. Yeah, for some reason, I can't put this stuff on the screen. I don't know why it's showing, but thank you for the donation. Glory says, I love how the PayPal app has these nice Black Lives Matter GIFs, or gifts, as they say, then locks my account for saying Syria or Palestine or Cuba. I know, right? Liberal democracy. They pretend that they stand with minorities and people of color, and that they're all about emancipation and human rights, and then they won't even let us say the names of other countries. And what is this? You know, talk about fascism. Like, I can't even say the name of my country. Y'all can't even say the name of my country, or Palestine, or you know, Libya or Iran, without being censored and having your payment put on hold. What is this? This is beyond 1984, man. Okay, Mona, okay, you can read this aloud. I sent this to say great coverage today. Thank you, Mona. You're doing such a great, amazing job reporting on this horrendous trial. Thank you for all you do. Also, I sent you some links on Twitter. The second link is Hillary. She's talking about trying to invent or support technology that sounds a lot like WikiLeaks. I have not seen that. Are you talking about because we saw in the trial brought up that by Trevor Tim, if I recall correctly, that the secure drop file system that enables a source to upload things anonymously, that is widely used now by all major news outlets, was essentially copied and pioneered by WikiLeaks. They were one of the first to actually have this thing. And ironically, they're using that as a basis to accuse them of cyber crimes. Like, oh, look, you see, they're trying to anonymize the source. Criminals, cyber criminals, look at the... What? Everyone does that. It's a standard journalistic practice 100 years ago, and it's one now. What are you talking about? It's insane. So I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but I don't know this video by Hillary. I'm looking forward to seeing what she has to say. You know, she said that she wants to drone strike Assange. So I wouldn't be surprised if she coming up with some more malarkey. Mona says, I've never seen that video you said was like 20 minutes. So Collateral Murder. Yeah. Can you post the link or DM the link to me? Thanks. And I'm probably not watching. Okay. So I'll send it to you. It's just, for those of you who would like to look it up, just type Collateral Murder WikiLeaks and you will find it immediately. It has millions of views. And it's really what made WikiLeaks famous overnight. And I mean, it's not the only thing. Remember, we have hundreds of thousands. I think somewhere around 750,000, 250,000 documents total, if you count the Iraq war logs, the Afghan war diary, the Guantanamo Bay files from 2002 to 2008. We have a slew of documents of war crimes, torture programs. And like Ellsberg pointed out, they weren't even classified as top secret. You had hundreds of thousands of people could access this stuff. They don't even care. And Julian Assange is like warning them, trying to phone up Hillary. He doesn't even care. You can't win with him, man. But, you know, going back to Collateral Murder, it's just one among many exposés of the true nature of the imperialist war machine. That's why they're going after him. That's really what it's all about. Amanda, thank you for the super chat. Yes, the video with Glenn on Tucker Carlson. So that was brilliant. I posted the video on Twitter. It was absolutely brilliant. And Assange, like all people, regardless of origin, has rights under our Constitution, Bill of Rights, and other amendments. Yeah, Pompeo tries to say that he's a foreigner, and therefore he doesn't have First Amendment rights. It's bogus. If that's the case, then he shouldn't be prosecuted either under U.S. law, right? So I'm surprised they haven't brought up the 8th cruel and unusual punishment and the 5th right to a fair trial. So just as you're pointing out, these amendments under U.S. law, they exist, Article 3 and Article 6 in the European Convention on Human Rights, also about inhumane treatment and a right to a fair trial. And they're also in complete violation of that. It's just every way you look at this entire hearing and this extradition is illegal under any, scope, by anyone's standard. It's just completely farcical. So, of course, this is a First Amendment case, but they should use all the ammo they can. Definitely. Obviously, it's going to be a travesty of justice and a dark, dark day for journalism in America if they're crazy enough to find him guilty. We can just flush the Constitution if that happens. This is all so surreal. It's unbelievable. I agree. It is surreal. And, once again, the way they're doing it is they have a multitude of excuses, right? They're going to place them under SAMs. So they're not explicitly saying, well, actually they are. Of course, Mike Pompeo is explicitly saying he has no First Amendment rights. They're just not even ashamed at this point. But my point is that Bill Clinton back in the day passed the special administrative measures to make sure that they can openly violate your First Amendment rights, right to a fair trial, being spared from inhumane treatment by putting you under these special administrative measures, right? So that way they can say that, oh, it's just for extreme cases. Really? Julian Assange is an extreme case? Yeah, now we see where this is leading. It is really a travesty. It really is. We got a super chat over here. We got a nice thank you sticker from Melissa. Thank you very much, Melissa. I appreciate it. Most welcome. I'm really grateful. And I just want to make sure I didn't miss nobody's donations. By the way, we got 128 watching. Only 102 likes. So please make sure that you smash the like button. It helps with the algorithm so people see it. And please, by all means, share these videos. People need to know what's going on. There's not enough coverage. They're just burying this. So with that said, I'm going to end the stream now and leave it at that. So I thank you for tuning in. And once again, we'll be back tomorrow. Follow on Twitter for live coverage. And of course, we'll be here with a video summary afterwards. This is the trial of the century, right? You know, it needs to be covered. It is without a doubt the trial of the century. And I find it insane that they let us watch OJ on TV, but they won't let us watch this. You know, it tells you everything. So we'll leave it at that. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And thank you for supporting the show. If you haven't, by all means, please do so on Patreon, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. Anything goes. Anything is appreciated. It really means a lot. This is how we keep anti-imperialist and independent media going, right? This is the way. So it all depends on you guys. I really appreciate your support, and I thank you all for tuning in and sharing the videos and liking and commenting and all of the support. It really means everything. Make sure you subscribe as well on rockfin.com because, as you know, YouTube, they're censoring people regardless, but not just for Assange, you know, reporting other stories as well. So rockfin.com/RichardMedhurst. I post all the videos there. We're live there as well right now. And there's no censorship. And it's good to have a second base, right? So with that said, thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you soon. Take care.